think I'm going to be giving Lords of the Fallen another try, and maybe. This game is a bit cheesy though. It's like reminds me of Mortal Shell and Dark Souls. In order to know what's gonna be next, we gotta get a test. What's up, Neil? Bro, I just realized, have I been calling you Nihil instead of Niall? How should I say your name? What's up, Goose?
And so was formed the Hallowed Sentinels. Our duty being to stand vigil for signs of his return. Even
What
exile
is that
to
sound?
another realm could not silence
Sounds
the law
doubled
of
up.
God forever. And in time, Adir's malignant influence pervaded the world once more. In his hunger for vengeance, Adir
I
orchestrated the
see.
return of his demonic army. Light was swallowed by shadow, and with it, hope. A new, grim champion arises. The Dark
My
Crusade.
TV's too loud. The game's Lords of the Fallen.
And perhaps
It's like nihilism.
indeed come to pass.
Yeah, but how do I say that in short though?
That only they who shun the light in order to fight the darkness possess the power to defy a god.
Crunchy sound. It's like something crunchy. Weird sound. Yeah, I think I remember you, bro. You was on the stream before. It's coming up midday. After like, I just realized I have to turn the TV way down, so I can't hear it. But oh well, so be it. All right, folks, let's tap that screen. I'm willing to talk about absolutely anything. You do not have to talk about what's on the screen at all. But I don't really feel like throwing out any like hardcore topics right now. I'm not even in a, let's say, a mentally clear place at the minute, so my thoughts are a bit jumbled. So I don't want to get too deep. But I am still willing to debate anything. 328. Where? Well, what country you in, bro? Let's tap that screen if you wouldn't mind. It goes a long way. If you want to see people come up and speak on whatever subject, share it to them, DM them, or go into the little arrow and then press the yellow repost button. The more we interact, the better chances we have of actually having some decent conversations. Yeah, I remember the superpower conversation. What did you pick? TV's too quiet, man. I need to hit the game. Needs a timer as well. Let's go. Let's get them likes up. Let's also get the volume up. 0. Let's give me like 3. I'll do it. Am I a Jew? I mean, maybe. Would it be a problem if I was a Jew? Like, what's wrong with being a Jew? Yeah, I can get down with Hashem.
That heretical umbral lamp and the Dark Crusaders are necessary evils in these dire times.
Dire times.
So you, it would seem. Perhaps our aims will align further.
purchase. So you
Radiance, judgment.
Ooh, you can change weapons. Alright, I think I'll hold off from many shops for now. Go explore the area, see what it's actually what it has to offer. Folks, come on, bro. I don't. Well, actually, I think I have an idea why we keep getting put in these like ridiculously bad algorithms. It's shown us to like mostly right-wing sociopaths. So obviously they don't want to have these discussions. It's annoying. We gotta fix that. It's gonna take a little bit of work. So what is a neural network? What is that? Zambia. It's funny. Oh, it's not bad design. It's a hand, isn't it?
That's it, isn't it? Oh, the lamp of immortality. And the genuine article. Not a useless empty vessel like the one I saw that witless fool bumbling around with.
Hello?
I've learned a little since coming to Mornstead.
Yeah, I can hear you. What's up?
And the awful mission to which it's attached. I hope you recognize that frightful burden for what it is. In truth, what's been done to you is downright cruel.
Can you say that again, sorry? I don't know. I guess it depends on your outlook on life. Things you value, things you disvalue. I think bringing God into it would only suffice for people who are ultra religious. But even a religious person could be nihilistic. So. Well, actually, let me correct that because I think like the standard understanding of nihilism. Right, let's actually just Google it so we're on the same page. What we mean. What do you mean when you say nihilism? Yes. So like the traditional definition of nihilism is the rejection of all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless. Right. So most of us use nihilism in the last way, in the belief that life is meaningless. But yeah, it would entail religion as well. So my bad. Yeah. I guess technically you wouldn't be able to be nihilistic and religious, but you could still think life is meaningless. I don't know if that's true, right? So my view is that religion itself is a societal construct. Right? It's like a grouping of people, but the grouping of people is put together to basically lead for societal cohesion, basically. So it benefits people at the top of the hierarchy of religions. So the people at the bottom of the hierarchy in religion, they may actually buy into the view of hope and the afterlife and stuff like that. But to say that the people at the top of the hierarchy do is a different story, I think. Yeah, I don't think they have good reasons to, in all honesty. Because if you start thinking about the history of something like Christendom, lots of terrible things happen, and they're being overseen by people who purport to be religious. So obviously they don't take what the religion itself says seriously. Wait, can you say that again? No. Every religion is like that. There's contradictory people in every single religion, and the higher up you go in the power structure is the more, it's basically the more, not plausible deniability, but the more immunity you're afforded from all of the bad things you do. Like think of a pope, think of like an ayatollah, think of like a whatever the Jewish people have. they can have some crazy opinions, basically send people off to do crazy things or kill, and they basically remain immune from their decision making given their position. I mean, again, what are your nihilistic thoughts that you like? Would you like to describe them? Put it that way. I don't think that's nihilistic though. I think that's a realistic take. Yeah, I can see why you might think that, but that is like if you subscribe to a certain view. Like, think about it like this. Religious people have this view that, you know, all humans have a purpose, right? But when you actually think about it, right, what they're actually describing is themselves as objects of God, right? Like objects that God has created. Right? A subject doesn't necessarily have purpose. You're just the experiencer of things. An object like a screwdriver or a hammer or a nail, it has a specific purpose, right? An intended upon purpose based on the person who makes it. So if your view is like, oh, I'm this object who's supposed to meet this checklist criteria of existing, it's a skewed point of view already. Because right, put it like this: I was reading something last night, right? And it has something to do with Anselm or some shit like that, right? But basically, the guy broke it down to this: is like, you could put an ad in the newspaper and say, I'm looking for this type of woman, right? She can't smoke, she has to be a vegan, she has to be all these special things, okay? Now, nothing stops you from putting that ad in there, right? But it's down to reality to reference that person actually existing, okay? So you could have all these views about what you're supposed to be, but if reality doesn't support that, then there's no good reason to think that you're supposed to be these things or you're supposed to have this specific purpose. Does that make sense? Well, it could never be realistic. This is a fact, but you gotta remember, it's just what we imagine people to be, right? Or we put it this way, it's considered a fantasy. Okay? So there's the person, how they actually exist, and then there's your perception of that person. Your perception of that person is the fantasy, and that fantasy frame is actually what makes relationships successful or fail in the first place. It's not actually the person. So of course, like if other people are feeding you, basically manufacturing your desires of what should be wanted and what should be expected, right? And then you go out into the world trying to operate from someone else's view on desires or what's preferable, then you're gonna have problems, aren't you? Because who's to say that, like the ad, that the person in reality is gonna match up to this desire that's been manufactured? It just comes down to you. Maybe I didn't explain what I meant properly. Just develop a new fantasy. That's what you do. Yeah, that's exactly the truth of the matter, right? No one actually knows what life is for one and what it's supposed to be. So everyone's throwing out their own views, and people might subscribe to one view en masse and then start to act as if that's the normative. This is what you ought to do. This is what's expected. But just because a lot of people think this is how things should go, it doesn't mean they actually should go that way. Then you get like an incongruence when people start to be disillusioned with, oh, look, things are supposed to be like this. Like, I'm supposed to be a millionaire by 21, supposed to be married, have a house, etc. Like, none of that has anything to do with reality. That is a fantasy. Maybe that might be obtainable to a certain amount of the population, but it doesn't mean that all humans are supposed to perform in the same way. I mean, biologically, you could say, yeah, humans are supposed to reproduce, right, in order to sustain the population. But throughout history, not everyone has been able to reproduce. Like, so it's not a given that it must be this way that you've got this idea. But yeah, like, I'd say, not in a rude way, I'd say lower your expectations of life and just like experience it and just see what can I learn from this? What can I get out of this? I'm not saying that it should be like, I'll just take whatever, you know, I'll just be a dreg. I'm not saying that in that kind of way. I just mean, you can't necessarily bend things to your will. So it's better to try and extract what you can from the experience and then just move to another one. No, he went off. In a way, yeah. In a way. But what do you mean by it, though? Can you explain a bit more? Mm-hmm. That's fact. But still doesn't explain why you're feeling nihilistic, though.
Diviner dear, witness this offering I make to you.
I mean, that's a given, though. That's expected. Hello. What's up? Okay. Last show. No, that's extreme. Now support that. Support that. Give your reasons. Lords of the Fallen. Oh wait. Not a fan. Like, I used to play the old GTAs, but I'm a bit disillusioned with Grand Theft Auto. Nah. No, it's gonna be degenerate. So it's just, yeah. Not to say I won't play it. I probably will at some point, but. This is true, yeah. What do you mean? Well, yeah, there's only so much you can do. It's gonna be car missions, stealing missions, fighting missions. And that's it, really. It's gonna be the same shit. But anyways, wait. Anyways, right? Why do you think hate speech should be punishable by death? Let's talk about that. You didn't really think that through, did you? I don't know. I've not seen that happen. You're probably hearing that from like right-wing snowflakes, really and truly. Nah. So there's if you incite violence or terrorism, then yeah, you'll go to jail. It's a given, isn't it? Wait, how old are you? How old are you? You gonna answer that and you, Rieni, or however you say that? How old are you guys? Because you shouldn't be up here if you're not over 18. Don't lie about your age. All right, you gotta go. Gotta go. All right. Are you sure you're 26? So you're probably lying though. I assume so. There's something wrong with my computer. That's why my frames are so dropping so much. I don't know what's up with it. You gotta reboot it or something like that. But anyways, right, it is an open panel. I would have liked to hear the view on hate speech being punishable by death though. That would have been interesting. Yes, it is. Well, some people would disagree. That's the problem. Trying to figure out what is proportional punishment is a big problem. I think that's subjective. That's subjective. There might be some countries that have a better like rehabilitation rate, but in general, the argument is like people want to abolish prisons because it doesn't actually rehabilitate people. It actually facilitates like worse behavior in the long run and worse abuse, which is kind of crazy. But I do hear America's pretty bad. I hear their system's pretty bad. I'm not getting locked up anywhere, mate. Like that. But alright, anyways, anyone out there want to actually request up and have a debate about something? Come on up. Alright, appreciate that. Go figure out the nihilism thing though, because what you said didn't really seem like it had anything to do with nihilism. Maybe, just like a little bit of gloom. But that's not to say that everyone experiences that, so that's quite normal. It's quite normal. I don't think it's right, to each their own, of course, but I definitely don't think it's necessary to believe in a god to have hope for life and humanity and just human flourishing. It's not. To be honest, the more you learn about like things like philosophy and like sociology or psychology, is the more you can actually understand why it's worth being around, why it's worth making the world a better place. if you just default to religious views, then it's like, how can I explain this? Like, people who are religious have very closed-minded views on things like morality. So an example of this would be, right, say you got two members of staff, right, that work for your business. One member of staff does everything right, but he does it because he's scared to death of being punished. And the other member of staff does everything right because he knows exactly how the business functions and why things need to be done in that way. So the person who knows why things need to be done in that way are people who operate outside of religious structures. They don't depend on the divine command theory. They do the right thing based on their knowledge. People who do the right thing based on religion do the right thing based on fear. So what that means for someone like that is the minute that there is a chance that they're not being watched or they can get away with doing something, they will do it. Okay? So that's not just on morality, but for a variety of things. So the view of like life not mattering without God is also one of those types of things. Yeah. So it is a program like, so my view is that humans invented God, right? But by the time you get to the Abrahamic religions, which is like 2,000 years ago, you're talking about sophisticated societal structures, right? So people who develop these have had like, I'm going to say millennia, just as like an arbitrary number, to figure out how humans work, how to control humans, and what might be best for that time that they lived in. So at the point where you get the Abrahamic religions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, it's primarily about societal cohesion, basically keeping people together and being able to move these people in a direction. So when you think about it from that point of view, you're just essentially signed up to an authoritarian control system. Some people might get good things out of it, but majority of what happens there benefits the people at the top of the hierarchy, who can shake and move and like basically make you identify as and what they want you to, rather than you going outside and looking at, all right, what is the actual, what is reality, what's going on with the world, and how do I fit into that? They've already made a story for you, made an identity for you. So of course, if your personal life doesn't match that identity that's been made for you, you're gonna have some psychological turmoil. I can't hear you. No, too quiet. Oh yeah, that's all right. So again, that is a fact of the matter, right? I was going to explain something, but I think it's too long-winded to get into. But that is like one of the prime human survival mechanisms. It's in-group, out-group politics. So with what you think or how you operate, even if it's the correct thing to do, differs from what the group thinks. It's a direct threat to that system to keep you around, because you're going against the authority of that group, or the friend dynamics, or the leadership, whatever it might be. So yeah, it's a threat response to shun you, even if you're absolutely correct. Like, it's what people are like. I can't hear you. No, I've heard of Handmaid's Tale, but never really paid attention to it. Hmm. Absolutely. A big part of the Abrahamic faiths was to erase women from nature, basically, or the fundamentally important role that they play. Think about like the big right. So the big three Abrahamic faiths are primarily patriarchal. Right? So that means they're male centered, they're male dominated. God Himself is a man. Right? God didn't well traditionally, right. So to get to the God of the Bible, there was initially a god called El, and he had a wife called Asherah. Okay, so like in the Canaanite pantheon, the Jews came and basically took that whole idea and then started making the god you know today. But traditionally, gods had wives, right? Just like in the Greek pantheon, in the Egyptian pantheon, the Mesopotamian pantheon, gods had wives. So there was a female-male balance, right? But through the Abrahamic faiths, their view was to erase and suppress women through the whole thing. So it's like what you're seeing playing out in terms of like a cult-minded thing that might be happening in The Handmaid's Tale would really just be them doing a critique of religion as it actually functions. But the problem is women who are bought into religion, they display what's called internalized misogyny, right? So they basically uphold the same system. So while they're inside of it, they can't see that they're enforcing these bad things upon themselves and other women. So they end up being like what just called reactionaries, like people who want to keep these conservative values, people who want to marginalize and oppress other people. But people, particularly women who do see through the lens, they usually end up escaping, hopefully. But you can't tell that to everyone because they'll get angry. What's up, Nicole? Your mic's a bit low. I can't hear you properly. Yeah. See, it might be my headphones, but it sounds really quiet. I can hear you now. Yeah. So you saying something about marrying high? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's that speaks to like what we said earlier on with the in-group out-group thing. It's you're not out of, put it this way, you're in danger if you do like stray from the norm, or if you do speak up about certain injustices. Societally, like economically, people will put you at disadvantage. But what you were saying about how women would just marry up in terms of marrying into status or like marrying for protection and money, that has a lot to do with the same kind of the same principles of the Abrahamic religion. So not just Abrahamics, because it's other places in Asia and even other places in Africa and in the West. But traditionally, why that would happen is because marriage was a contract between men and the woman's father, because women were perceived as property. Right? So there was something called a dowry. Basically, the husband's family pays a certain amount to the bride's family. It would be like cattle, it would be wine, it would be whatever they traded in for the hand of that woman. So society was, what patriarchal societies were geared towards basically pushing out women and perceiving them as a lower value within the patriarchal structure compared to a brother or whatever. Well, she's gone, but I just finished explaining it. And based on that, they would look for lords and people, what would be called feudal lords and aristocracy, basically like trade, the trading class, I forget what they call them, right? The mercantile class, lords, duchess, etc. Not duchess, whatever they call them. But basically, those men of power, men of affairs, would go to these places, which would primarily be peasants, and they would purchase the daughter of the family from them. So that view was like, this is why women would be geared towards marrying upwards in society, because their ability to work was taken away from them. Their ability to own their, basically have sovereignty and be able to, you know, do what they wanted with their money was taken away from them. So it was societally geared for women to be able to marry into class, marry into families, not just for them, for their own safety, but for the safety and benefit of their family. So that's like, again, it's marriage as an institution was never about equality. It was about ownership. It was literally about legal property, right, until, you know, the suffrage movement and all that kind of shit. What's up to Portugal? What's up, Matthew? Yeah, like I think even a good example of it, like a GCSE example, might be Romeo and Juliet or something like that. It's like it was never set up like that in the first place. Oh, welcome back. I was saying basically why you might, so today where we are in society, why we think that women should marry up, basically, like class wise, right? It goes back to the same patriarchal system of men basically establishing ownership over women. So traditionally, marriage was a purchase of the daughter of a family. So society geared, basically the societal configurations of the family unit, right? The value of the daughter would be perceived less than the value of the son, right? Why? Because the daughter was then seen as like a resource to trade into another family. Does that make sense, right? So on the daughter's behalf, she wouldn't get a choice of where she was going. Her marriage arrangement would be for her own protection and for the benefit of her family. So that's what the after effects are in our society. Now, obviously, it's not so much like that in the West anyway. But the idea of being able to jump classes by marriage comes from that, the aristocracy, the mercantile class, monarchy. Like peasants didn't need to get married traditionally, right? Because marriage was about ownership. It was about establishing, I own this woman, she belongs to me. Right? But anyways, right, that's a bit extra. Big up Mars. Mars. I mean, shit, I ain't trying to cancel marriage. I'm just pointing something out, right? That was like the tradition of it. Sorry, what was you saying? Oh, yeah, that's a good point too. But do you know what? There's even a deeper layer to that, right? You know when people say like men suffer under patriarchy too? Do you realize that last names didn't come about till the 11th century and then didn't popularize till the 1400s? Why that happened is because the ownership class, like the lords again and the mercantile class, needed to be able to put their last name on property so they could pass it down through their lineage. It's like traditionally marriages, like people didn't have last names. It'd be like a John of Smithing or whatever, John of, you know, Farming or whatever it was. There weren't any last names until people figured out, oh, we can have a class divide and I can establish my property with my last name. And then that's how we got last names. Right? Hence why slave trade produces so many people with English or Portuguese or Dutch last names and shit. So they didn't have last names before that. so yeah, Richard Sack, like all kinds of weird shit. But yes, you actually are right about that in terms of the woman taking on a man's name. That is also a hangover of that. This is true, but awareness Right, so awareness for awareness sake is kind of useless, right? But awareness for like ideological benefit makes a lot of sense. It's like what you're saying about over philosophizing or trying to analyze society, it can be a headache. But even within that philosophizing about society and still like you have to have a semblance of a normal life, that is also contained in philosophy. That is also contained in psychoanalysis. I think it's described as fetishistic disavowal. Right? Like, I know very well the issues with this thing, but I do it anyway, right? But why I do it anyway has various different reasons behind it. So, like you can say, I know very well society is fucked up, but I participate anyway. Like, I know very well that eating animals is wrong, but I eat them anyway, right? So, no, but this is as an example of what I'm saying. So people who reach a certain level of analysis and whatever it is, they are very aware of the contradictions, but they manage to live in those contradictions or the tension. And sometimes living in the tension of the contradiction produces something new, like a new way of being, a new way of thinking, a new way of doing stuff. But yes, it can be a bit overwhelming. That's true, super true. Yeah, I would agree. But what? Yo, that's crazy as fuck. You'd be doomed. Do you know the first thing they'll try and do is sell you stuff, and the second thing they'll try and do is control your decisions. Well, that's true, but even without the hive mind, who's to say what anyone does is wrong is completely subjective anyway. So, like you like you can say you can have an opinion about what is wrong and right, but you can't actually the only way you can instill your views of wrong and right is through maximum violence, and that's just kind of what we're all subject to. It's the only way. I'm torn on that subject because it depends what it is you're fighting for, right? If they're right, so if right, so the best strategy of war is to not fight. Okay, ideally, there's no bloodshed, right? What happens is like I think it was a Bolshevik revolution or something like that, or prior to that. People just woke up in the morning and they realized a group of people had just seized control of all of the necessary things of society, like the water plant, the energy plant, etc. Right, and it had changed hands overnight, and they couldn't do anything about it. That's an ideal way of changing things, but that's also a type of violence as well. In the same sense, I don't think, for me, protesting is so a protest in our modern society. If you think about governance, it exists in a containment formula, right? So, for instance, imagine society is like a closed gas chamber, right? When the gas starts getting too much in there and it starts to expand, like it's going to blow up, right? Like there's going to be violence, there's going to be war. All like someone needs to do is just release, like just turn the release valve a little bit. Protest plays out like that, but turning that release valve a little bit doesn't change anything. That's a part of a containment strategy. So an example of this was like when we was going to go to war after 9/11, right, and millions of people took to the street, and it was like, no, like we're not going to war, and everyone was like, yeah, like we can actually change something. Tony Blair was like, yeah, like don't stop them, don't send the army out, don't trample them, don't kill them, just let them protest. We're going to war anyway, right? So it's in that sense, protesting alone is an interesting strategy for awareness, but it's not an effective strategy for changing things. Same thing could be said about actually let's just go get a bunch of guns and shoot people. That's not an effective strategy for changing things either. So what I think is it's a nuanced balance of both, depending on what it is you're trying to do. That's what I think. Well, but that's not even true though, right? No, that's not even true. So that's like a misperception of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. So Martin Luther King preached non-violence, but if you think about his strategy, it was a type of violence to basically expose violence happening to black people, right? In terms of going out, getting arrested every single weekend, being hosed down, having dogs bite you, like the most atrocious things. His strategy was violent in a different type of way. But Malcolm X was just saying, I'm not pro violence. I'm not going to go out and do violence, but I'm not a pacifist. So like his movement wasn't violent either. It was just ideological. It was a cult, really, right? He was a part of the Nation of Islam. So I think it's a misunderstanding. Put it that way. But that's not to say people who ideologically were on both sides of those fence didn't go out and do violent things, because it was necessary to survive. Well, yeah. But yeah, maybe I didn't explain what I meant there properly. Explain it maybe a bit better. Oh yeah, it was there. It was there. It's just like a subtitle. But yeah, I guess. Absolutely. Kills 8 million people a year. 1.6, about 1.6 million of those are secondhand smokers. So they didn't even smoke themselves. Yep, friends, children, family members, neighbors, strangers. Yeah. It's very bad. Very bad. Like, smoking is responsible for 10% of annual deaths across the world. So all mortalities, smoking is 10% of them. Yeah. And it's literally something that society is choosing to produce and consume. So it's like, it's proper crazy. Some people think that. We're moving towards it. Like well, at least in England, hopefully we're moving towards it. But worldwide we should be. It's just a matter of fighting against corporations and lobbyists and people who have like a fundamental misunderstanding of rights and free will and all these kinds of things. Just ideological war. It's like you don't actually have a right to harm yourself. You don't actually have a right to harm other people. It's just a belief that people have. Mm. And what do you mean by against them? Well, I can't really be against someone. They're already gone. Oh, you're talking about euthanasia. Um, all right. So that's a very interesting, nuanced topic, right? I'm not necessarily against somebody who wants to leave the planet, right? But one could argue it takes more strength to want to leave and actually commit to it than to stick around if you're suffering. But in terms of asking, should the market provide the ability to delete yourself? I'm suspicious of that because there's too much coercion in it. What's up, Ags? I'm good. How are you? Yeah, kind of like half-assing it. There's lots of drop frames as well. Yeah, I've got something going on with my computer. It's just lagging the hell. So on TikTok it looks smooth. Yeah. So yeah, if you look at it on YouTube, it's like so it's just something going down. Yeah, I'm on a bunch of platforms at the same time. Oh, on Twitch, sick. It's like the least looked at platform. I didn't even press start on Twitch. Now I'm on Twitch now. Shit. Sure. Yeah. We assume that. We don't really know what it's like to die. So we assume that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not gonna dig into that. Like, finish the point you was making though. Mm. So the question is then, do you think people who are not mentally ill should have that option? That is kind of the same argument that people are severely disabled are making. I think it would make more sense for you to be consistent on the topic of just not having euthanasia at all, rather than making exceptions. Mm. I'm somewhat in agreement with that. I do think, like, I also think of do not resuscitate orders, stuff like that, as a similar type of coercion, because someone's in extreme how can you put it? They're just in extreme kind of turmoil psychologically. So the decisions they may come to and the conclusions they may come to aren't necessarily well thought through. Do you know? And I also think we live in a world where other humans will place their personal interests above the well-being of that person that they're caring for or responsible for, and help them do something just because it benefits them and not the person who's asking for the treatment or whatever it is. Yeah. Yeah, or emotional, something emotional, you know. Like imagine a wife who really really like deeply hates the husband, and the husband is like sick. Just like, oh well, I'm the person who gets to decide if we're gonna pull the plug. So like he's alright, like yeah, he wants the plug pulled, like he can't speak for himself, like so I'll decide it for him kind of thing. I imagine those things actually take place, right? So and vice versa, probably, right? And even alright, so here's a deep story, right? I can't remember exactly where it's cited, but there was this case, well there's a few cases of this, right? Mothers who have a history of working in the medical industry to a certain level, right? And they get accustomed to that attention, and it's like they intentionally make their children sick in order to have them in the system constantly. So there was this one story where this mother was actually intravenously and force feeding her child animal feces in order to make him sick, right? That people do shit like that to the people that they're supposed to be caring for, right? So those kinds of things make me dubious about these kinds of decisions that can be made. But anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, it's just. Yeah, that's a good point too. Would would you say that it's the same for arms manufacturing? Oof. But the principle's the same. It's a corporation profiting off death. Hmm. I mean, not on a like a. But anyway, I'm taking you way off the topic. Like, yeah, finish what you're saying. They're not. No, they're not, bro. No, not even close. They're not legal, but they didn't disappear. Oh, and you can have them legally too if you do it the right way. Yeah, farmer, uh, Olympic shooter, etc. They're different ways. Trap shooter, sorry. Nah, I'm not in agreement with that. Look, put this way, right? The invention of guns was never a good idea. Arrows were bad enough. Guns and bombs is too much. If you look at modern warfare now, like you got these videos coming out of Ukraine and Russia of men like literally running around the car being chased by a little tiny drone with an explosive on it. Humans shouldn't be doing this. Like, even ideologically, even in defense, we shouldn't be doing this, right? You think about how many people Obama killed during his time because of drone warfare. Like, we shouldn't be doing this. Depending, but then you also got to think of things like majority of firearms that are used or weapons that are used in general. It's usually the owner's weapon that's used on the people most close to them or on themselves. It's not usually some random stranger that shoots you. So proximity to the weapon is responsible for a lot of the deaths in the first place. But yeah, in a sense, I'm in agreement in terms of self-defense. But I think America has a structurally, politically, they have a different structure in terms of their amendments and what a republic even is. So the bearing arms was to do with keeping government tyranny in check ultimately. Where it is on a street level, not necessarily the same thing. Our country doesn't really have that kind of setup. I don't know. I don't know. I have this conversation with people all the time. I would say my knee-jerk reaction to most issues are more of a left type of view, but it doesn't necessarily mean I identify with all left politics or even the title of being left. I'm dubious of grouping up like that. Socialism? I don't know. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Right? I see critiques on both sides of it. Not to say like if Nahi was watching, they say I'm a centrist, right? But I would simply say, for the most part, I'm not informed enough to, ideologically commit to one side or the other. I just don't know enough. Maybe on some issues, yeah, maybe on some, but just in terms of picking sides, just I find that dubious. So conservatism, more or less. No, I know, but why I say conservatism, because I thought about your views on like trans women and your views on religion, etc. So they would be more conservative or traditionally conservative views. And when you throw capitalism into the mix, then yeah. Me? I don't really have an opinion. Like, you'd have to think of a specific issue that's just like a bit vague. not why Ags is here. Not why Ags is here. I'm joking. But my view is right, as a human, right, they have value, and I also think every human, if they can like figure out the socio-economic part of it, they have the right to self-determine or self-define, and I think that's super important in terms of a structuralist approach to deconstructing. So from that point of view, I'm pro what trans people do, but from another point of view, I'm cognizant of the effects that their movement has on stuff like women's movement, stuff like the black movement, and various other fights for rights, put it that way. So I'm not pro, I'm not against in that sense, just in general. But yeah, I'm learning about the topic more, put it that way. Yeah, that's something I've heard recently too. This is what I'm saying. This is why I'm not like hard on the issue in one way or the other, because I understand what women are saying. Why specifically have transgender men decided to somewhat co-op or like hijack women's specific spaces, whereas trans men aren't necessarily. Maybe they're just society's just not set up in a way where trans men can do that. But yeah, I do understand that from a woman's perspective. It can be a bit threatening. But yeah. Hey? What happened? Eminem, you know. Man, like Marshall. What's he saying? Yo. Come on up, bro. You gotta stand. Okay. Well, wait, was that Eminem just now? Oh, I see. Oh, welcome up. Depends. Or in what way, though? Say what? Bro, England's the head. What are you talking about? America's the body. England's the head. We're imperialism. We're imperialism. It's basically when a country or a kingdom expands its influence into other lands. Or its influence. It absolutely is. What language are you speaking right now? Hold on, what language are you speaking right now? No, it's Anglophone, so it's English. Doesn't matter. Alright, that's just like that'd be considered a, what do they call that? It's like a pigeon. It's like a pigeon of English. Go on. Pasta. Yeah, that's the only. Right, but listen. That's an Italian word, though. Isn't that an Italian word, though? We're probably all saying it wrong. If it comes from a specific country, we're probably all saying it wrong. That's what I thought. The hell that is. Yeah, but Rennie, right? Sorry, how do you say your name? UK versus USA in what capacity? Pick a topic. What, in America? Yeah, but America says world champions and doesn't play anyone outside of their country. I mean, no. How many wars has America won? England's won way more wars than America. I'm not insane, bro. We had like a 100-year war, like with France and shit. Like England, no. Just Google it. Doesn't matter. Like all of the wars, right? The only war you could say you almost won is basically fighting against us, but the French helped you do it. Bro, you didn't win Afghanistan. You didn't win Iraq. You didn't win Korea. You didn't win Vietnam. Like, you're not even winning against Iran right now. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about, G? World War II was won by the Russian communists, right? And then America came in at the end and claimed victory. Yes, they were. Like, the Russians are literally the ones who cleaned up Hitler's, like, last base. It was literally Russians. Bro, you just don't know history, fam. Yes, they stepped in at the right time and they turned the tides for the whole thing. Right, America's just a beg. America's a beg, bro. Bro, it's a Google away. It's literally a Google away. Bro, it's in books. It's in history books. Like, another funny thing is, like one of your... No, that's not true. That's not true. That's not even true, right? History is written by the rich, right? It's not written by the winners. And history is a polemic also, right? No. Alright, so one of your people, I think Edward Bernays, right, could explain to you the history of propaganda, right? Propaganda is produced by who's in power and who has money. The winners don't necessarily get to write the story. But how many wars have you won though? How many wars have you won though? It doesn't matter how much military might you have if you can't win a war. That is silly. That is silly. Fam, hold on a minute, right? You sound like you're from South America, with all due respect, or Latin America. Why do you even care? Exactly. Why do you even care, right? America treats you like shit. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what America's like, South America and like the Caribbeans aren't even part of us. North America doesn't give a shit about the rest of the continent. This is a fact. Bro, they literally just kidnapped the whole prime minister from Venezuela. they don't care. Like, why are you supporting them? No, right. So listen, having pouring billions of pounds, bro. I understand what you're saying, and I know it's well documented that America's military is advanced, right? But what I'm trying to say to you is having billions of pounds every year come out of your economy and going into the military budget doesn't entail that your military is actually successful at the job of warfare or defense. That's what I'm saying to you. Yeah. Fam, you know what you sound like? With all due respect, Alex, you sound like I know Black Papi. That's what you sound like to me right now. Like, what are you saying? No, I'll just joke with you, bro. Ags is God. No. Alright, so what you need to understand is what you need to understand is the history of American imperialism, okay? That's why you're not attacked. But think about how the world changed based on 9/11, right? You were living in a world where you thought you were the only people who could do anything. And then just two simple planes happening change your whole reality. Just two planes, right? No, but this is what I'm explaining to you, right? So how you're existing currently is actually in a state of overcompensation. It's not successful, right? If you could take, for instance, you could take a small branch of our military operators like SAS and have them train all the Green Berets or whatever, have them train majority of your staff, right? Because we understand war better than you. And this is a fact. Right. Exactly. Exactly. That's what I'm saying to you. Exactly. What does that say? That's a cowardice thing. Right. So if a guy has to say, look, I'm going to create this weapon, this crazy weapon, and I'm going to be the only one to use it, and I'm going to make it so no one else can use it after. That is the operation of a coward, right? It's not someone who's willing to go to war on the ground. You're America. What you're talking about in America, again, all due respect, I love America and Americans. This isn't like an attack on America. It's just as a critique, right? what you're looking at in terms of your military is the expression of American imperialism, so the expansion of the American empire, but not American war. All right, no one has come onto your shores yet. We're yet to see if you're testable like that. Hopefully it never happens, right? But think about the massive fear that America has historically had for China and Russia because of exactly that. Right now, America is having Ukraine operate as a proxy for them and NATO because they can't go into conflict with Russia directly, right? So think about what you're saying, right? No. A Russia think about it. Russia is standing on their own, basically. They're 10 toes down versus NATO, versus the whole fucking world. I'm not pro-Russia either. But just think in context. In context. No. Bro, we talking about? Bam, as UK, as the UK, yes, and so is the UK, right? Didn't you just see the minute that America realized that they couldn't, fam, the minute that America realized they couldn't win a war with Iran, what did they start doing? Pulling resources from all of these different places in preparation for retaliation, okay? Who is teaching America how to manage drone warfare right now? Like $150,000 planes just smashing into shit. It's the fucking Ukrainians, okay? So like, what are you talking about? Like, you're not actually ready for war. You just have a lot of fucking toys. That's the problem. That is the problem. Okay. Say again, sorry? Well, I don't know. I'm not even keeping track of it currently. All wars are. Brother, all wars are. All wars are political. Right? Yes, that's what you get. That's what you get from imperialism, right? You are in bed with so many different people that you can't move without the permission or the constraints of those other people. That's how it works. Bro. Alex, look, Alex, you're correct. You're correct in terms of ammunition or munitions, right? You have a massive stockpile. You have the most advanced. Right? You're correct, right? But this doesn't, bro, right. Yes. Your armory doesn't demonstrate your ability to win at war, okay? Other things are included, like the economics, like the politics, right? Like the psychological elements. All of these things are also included, right? So having a significant armory doesn't guarantee you victory. That's all I'm saying to you, bro. And history has shown us that. I don't know. Sorry? Yes, because you just nicked it. You literally just stole it. That is literally why. Like, what are you talking about? You literally just kidnapped the president. Like, like, what are we talking about here? That's not war, though, is that? No, right. So Right. So how do you define might, right? If you're talking about munitions or armory, then yeah, you've got a lot of toys. But if you're actually talking about war, right, America isn't up there like that. England or UK as a small country has way more dubs under their belt than America ever probably will, right? Well, we've had hundreds of war with mainland Europe, right? So we got the Scandinavians, we got the French, we got the the Germans, right? We got World War One, we got World War Two. With all due respect, right? Yeah, no, I agree, But like I was explaining to Ags and her friends, right? England is still technically the head of the beast. America is the body, right? So like America is the child of England, essentially, in simple terms. I don't know if that's true. All right. No, I don't either. We got the Romans. All right, so quickly. Right, let me just interject. Quickly, right? Just for like some information, right? So these are some of the wars and conflicts historically that the UK has been involved in and or won, right? So you've got Roman invasion and conquest, 55 BC. You've got Viking and Anglo-Saxon invasions, 5th to 10th centuries. You've got Norman conquest and subsequent conflicts, 1066 to 1071, that's 12th century. You've got various battles within that, right? You've got Barons' Wars, which is 1215 to 1217 and 1264 to 1267. You've got 100 Years' War, which is 1337 to 1453. You've got War of the Roses, 1455 to 1487. You've got Anglo-Spanish War, 1585 to 1604. You've got Wars of the Three Kingdoms, 1639 1653. Basically, we can keep going, right? 7 Years' War, we've got the American Wars, which is Queen Anne's War, 1702 to 1713. Then you got War of the American Independence, 1775 to 1783. You got War of 1812. You got Napoleonic Wars and resulting conflicts, 1803. Well, the French helped you win, so technically we did win because you had to get help from our rivals. But anyways, Napoleonic Wars in the resulting conflicts, 1803 to 1815. Then you got Anglo-Russian War, 1807 to 1812. And you got Anglo-Swedish War, 1810 to 1812. Then you got Anglo-Afghan Wars, 1839 to 1842, and then all the way up to 1919. You got Crimean War, 1853 to 1856. Then you got the Boer Wars, 1880 to 1902. Then you got the Great War, 1914 to 1918. Then various little skirmishes underneath that. They're scrolling quite a while. Egyptian expedition, World War II. All I'm saying is Cold War, 1947, 1991. So that's a lot of war. Yeah, it's a lot of war. Yeah, sure. In which war? Oh, but in the same war? Well, one could argue that technically we never did lose because actually, like the British part of the colony in America is what it is now. Is what you've become. So you could have easily have been Dutch or Spanish or French, but you ended up still becoming an English colony. So technically we won in the long run. I don't know. No, I don't know. All I'm saying is this, right? The list of American wars are pale in comparison to the list of British wars, okay? So that's all I was defining. Right, exactly. Yes, you're like a child throwing around his toys in this pram. Like, yes, you've got a lot of toys, but you don't have the brain yet. So, we just been through this. Like, now name the list of wars that you can conclusively say you've won. No, you're all right. So America as an empire is actually an extension of the European empire. It's not a standalone thing, right? If Europe, no, seriously, if Europe was to step back from America in entirety, the United States would be significantly vulnerable on all fronts, from Asia to Europe to even some like BRICS coalitions. You'd be significantly vulnerable without Europe. So let's be honest here. It's not like you're like the big brother, like you like to think of yourself as the world police, but there's a lot of like allowance for you. Yeah, but people comply. People comply because of other things. Nah, not really. Nah, not really. Yeah, that's in your continent. That's in your continent. That's in your continent. Right, but you also got to remember sanctions, right, affect people in America significantly as well. Right? You have to remember that. Okay, so things like yeah, Yeah, of course, but I don't think you've won there. Who cares? Who cares, bro? You didn't win the war, though. You did no, bro. You also got to remember, right? When you do these kind of economic moves, you know, like Taco, like Trump always chickens out kind of thing. It also affects the people on your landmass, the people in your country who are actually importing and exporting things. It's not just them. So the price of putting a sanction on something like that also is paid by the American people. It's not just the other country. Okay? It's the same conversation. Right, yes. I didn't dispute that. I don't dispute that. Oh shit. And we just let you planes. Oh, big talk, but little us just let you some planes, alright? Let you some trading, let you some money. Right? It's funny. I was just fucking about. Conclusive. Okay. Kind of bad. That's Gavin talking, bro. It's gone quiet. Right, yo. Anyways, so like, you guys want to talk about anything else? It was a bunch of girls on the panel who were fucking about saying America or UK, and this this is what's happened. Like, it's just turned into a, like, our guns are bigger than your guns battle. So, would you like to talk about anything else? Oh, he's on T. Kind of Assassin's Creed you playing, or what number? Oh, I never played that. Is that an early one? I think I've only ever played the first three. How could he bite me through a tree? Now, they're all kind of dry though, I'll be honest with you. It's more of the same with Assassin's Creed. It's just like Ubisoft slop. I think it was always bad from the first three. Like, when you really think about it, Assassin's Creed is just a dressed up Prince of Persia. Yeah, that's all it really is. Yeah, just what made it interesting initially is like the European history in it, embedded in it, for most people anyways, and they're like the secret society references and stuff. That's what made it interesting. Yeah, it's an historical fiction. Well, it depends what kind of games you like. Games like this are more suffering than fun, but it depends. Decent. It is a great game. It definitely is. Definitely is. I've not played them, so I don't know. $1,200. So may as well just been Wolfenstein then, basically. Just Black Wolfenstein. It's terrible. The politics in gaming has got really, really bad recently. Yeah. Metal Gear Solid is one of my favorite games right here. It's like one of my favorite series of all time. Metal Gear Solid. Great, one of the greatest franchises of all time. Who, me? Metal Gear Solid came out in 98, right? The first, well, the American release of it was 98. The next one was like 01, then 04, then like 2008, 2009, and then 2013 or 2015 was the last one, Metal Gear Solid 5. Nah, you lot don't know ball, bro. Metal Gear Solid 2 is the greatest Metal Gear Solid of all time. 2. Sons of Liberty. Yeah, Snake, right, so Snake Eater has a really drab story, right? It just has like a lime green background on absolutely everything. It had really good ideas in terms of like camouflage system and the doctor, like the healing screen. But compared to Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 2 changed gaming, right, in terms of storytelling, mechanics, and even the political climate of the world. They literally had to take out half of the game because of September 11th. Right, so the Metal Gear Solid 2 is like philosophical critique, like what we just finished talking about with warfare and child soldiers, all of that, like it's embedded in the overarching storyline. Like Hideo Kojima's genius, right? But anyways. Yeah, I'd try that. But yeah, anyways, yeah. Two was kind of groundbreaking, bro. If you compare like the jump in technology from Metal Gear Solid 1 or even to like Twin Snakes. Well, actually Twin Snakes came out after Metal Gear Solid 2. Yeah. Exactly. Oh, for Xbox as well. Yeah, man. Two it goes for me, it would have to go 2, then 4, then 1. No, 2, 4, 5, 1, 3. Right? 3 is like, well, no, Peace Walker is the worst. Yeah, it's this like if I switch on my PS4 right now and show you Phantom Pain and show you how fluid it is, the gameplay, switching from gun to gun, jumping, rolling, strategy. Exactly. Right, that's what I'm saying. Right, if you see how like that's literally the same engine they use to make Helldivers. So so in terms of gameplay, it is high quality, but it just didn't get finished because the storyline is cut up and because they basically booted Kojima from what do you call it, Konami. But it is crazy. What? I didn't know Fallout's been around that long. Wow, I didn't know that. I think I may have tried Baldur's Gate one time. Skyrim. Damn, bro. I guess. Came out. What year did it come out? Say 2011. Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't have been playing games like that at that time. Oh no, yes, I actually have that. I have a Skyrim on Switch. Right, I couldn't really get into it, but it's interesting. It's not like a full game. That's like a yeah. GTA 5 is shit, man. It's shit in comparison to San Andreas and then GTA 4, right? GTA 5 is weak sauce. Now it has greater mechanics, but like so GTA 4 is super limited in terms of what you can do, but the things you can do, like in terms of physics, it feels way more weighted. It feels a bit more realistic in terms of jumping from San Andreas to GTA 4. GTA 5 is just like it's just it's, it's just like how can I explain it? It's like it's just degenerate. It's just like nonsense on stacked up on top of nonsense. It's just more and more ridiculous in comparison to the original games. Saints Row is super ridiculous, like just nonsensical. But like, how can I explain it? Like even Michael's story, Franklin's story, the Mad Guy's story, right? They're just like ultra exaggerations. CJ's story is ridiculous, but it's still based in that world. It makes sense. But like with the mobile phone, like anyways, like, this is just my opinion. Yeah, big smoke. All right, so I don't know. This is just my opinion, anyways. I've always when I got GTA 5 on PS3 initially, I thought this is shit. Tried to play it online, hacked to death. So I never bothered ever since. So that's just my opinion. No, no, it ain't. No, it isn't, bro. If you like, so yes, it's expensive, but that doesn't entail quality, right? So if you actually really think about it, okay, Grand Theft Auto hasn't actually changed since Liberty City or the original Grand Theft Auto 3, right? Before it was a platform game, it's like from above, right? But Grand Theft Auto actually mechanically hasn't changed since the first one on PlayStation 2. All that's happened is they've just expanded the story, added a helicopter, added a boat. You're still driving around doing driving missions, you're still doing shooting missions, you're still doing like run, collect, and come back missions. It's exactly the same. So all the way up till 5, you're doing the same things. So it's more about like cultural or market hype than it is actually about game quality or like originality in the game. The substance of Grand Theft Auto peaked at GTA San Andreas. That, as far as I can see. But anyways, nah. Oh, Shenmue. Yeah, yeah, I've heard about it still. I've heard about it. Yeah, I've heard about it. Nah, nah. It's like Judgment and the Yakuza, like you said. Like they're not that interesting to me. Them types of games. They're a bit lame. They're a bit Sega. A bit Sega. I like action RPG and adventure games primarily. So it might be interesting, but in terms of fucking hell, Mike's gone crazy. Anyways, guys, look, I went well over time, and we've not really talked about anything interesting for a while. So it's time. It's time to go and experience life for a bit. And we'll come back tonight. Do you guys have any topics you want to talk about tonight? Likely. Sega. Right. Anyways, I appreciate you, Gavin, and you, Alex. Big up to you, even though you're like crazy American imperialist. Homie, all right. Let's see what Homie says quickly, and then we'll chop it down. Homie, what's up? Quick, say what you want to say. Yeah, I can hear you. All right, let's do this. Yeah, sure. All right. So what are the parameters you're using? What are the parameters you're using? Parameters. How are you measuring it? So like, say what categories are you comparing? Say what? Oh, okay. I don't know. What is meant by ethnicity? Not necessarily. There are people who've been there for like centuries, well, near enough. I don't think you could really codify like the black experience like that in the UK. In terms of us being on the world stage, we're really young. So like, let's say the last 50 years of people are really shaping what black UK culture is. Prior to that, we were just West Indian or Africans in England. That's what I'm saying. It's not a well-defined thing. We're still creating it. It's quite recent. You could say it would be things like our food type of stuff we like to eat, type of stuff we like to listen to, type of ways we speak. But it varies region to region, right? If you're from the south, you think and speak a certain way. If you're from the north, it just depends. I don't think that's true. I'm a studier of American culture. Yeah, but there are people. I'm a study of American black culture, and I would say that that's not necessarily true. So New York culture is quite different to Memphis culture, or or Chicago culture is quite significantly different from Compton culture. So, but here's a deep thing, right? So we just mentioned with soul food, there's some truth to that, but also the bracket. So you've got one half of people who might describe soul food based on like basically the scraps that they had to work with during slavery. But then if you got a layer deeper than that, some people who've done history on this actually identify soul food as primarily Germanic food, right, which is another layer of knowledge if you care to know. So, yeah, yeah. I don't know. Look, I don't fully understand it either, but some people say that. Right? So yeah, but again, I don't know. Hmm. What's AVE? Nice. Oh, I heard of that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, slang. Yeah, I agree. I agree. No, that's right. So don't get me wrong. I agree, but I think right. So as an export, right. So as a British person, right, I can say America's greatest export is their media. So look, we learn lots about the world through the lens of America. So like black culture, hip hop, even like Black Power movement, civil rights, etc. Even white culture, we learn lots of it primarily through your media. So what you're saying is true, but I think if you looked at it a bit closer, like we just discussed, kind of thing, region to region, class by class, because you got like the black brulee in America, who are like a upper class kind of fucking stuffy conservatives, and then you've got like what might be considered hood culture, which is not that, which is like the opposite of that, what one might call lumpen proletariat behavior. So even in your world, in your country, there's like a group of people who think about blackness in one way and a group of people who think about blackness in another way. Does that make sense? Respectability politics. Yeah, that's kind of true. On the world stage, no, but on the world stage. But then you also got to think about the history of your black academics, like your John Henrik Clark's, your fucking Booker T. Washington's, on and on and on. Right? They don't exemplify hood culture or really come from hood culture like that. They're literally the intellectual class, or what we would describe as the Renaissance class from that like 1920s period. Um, Well, it depends what area you're talking about. Because if you're talking about like early 2000s hood culture, then it looks a specific way. But if you compare early 2000s hood culture to now or 90s hood culture, it looks different. So I think it depends. I would say it would be what's associated with like on the female type of side is more like ratchet type of behavior, if that's even a popular word still used now. Right. So like just say like trap type music, like quite salacious, like not verbose, but it's just out there. It's just like the expression of hip hop culture, just in a more overtly sexualized type of way. Does that make sense? Hmm. Shouldn't call that uppity though. That's just classist, isn't it? It's like, well, from my understanding, the view of uppity was actually produced by racist white people saying that these niggas shouldn't have any place in our society, and therefore they're jumping out of their place. So now we call them uppity. Right? They're literally expressing upward mobility. So as like a black person, as a black person calling another black person uppity, it's like your internalized racism is enforcing class standards. Does that make sense? But you could say he's a coon. Or like whatever like, you know, you could say that. No, that's true. That's true. That's true. I'll just say it though. Yeah. Yeah. It's like a Roland Martin or something. Yeah, probably. But I fully understood what you meant though. I fully understood what you meant. I'm just like, it just, to me, right, you know, like you came and you was like, yeah, I'm gonna start a diaspora war, like jokingly. Our internal critiques sometimes are valid, right? Like, you know, views on some like stuffy, like really bourgeois type of mentality people are, their critiques are valid and they're purposeful. But on like a world stage, it's like, okay, should I actually be expressing my disdain? Because what are the outcomes of it? Do you know? Yeah, facts. Yeah. Yeah. But this, yeah, you're right. You're right about that. That's really, you're really just describing like class warfare, really. So it's kind of what you're describing. SZ, do you want to add anything? Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, but so to boil it back down, right? Is American black culture superior to black British culture? From a media point of view, yes, right? A lot of black British people, at least for the past 2 or 3 generations, have taken a lot of their cultural cues from America, and this is undeniable. Why is it undeniable? Because America's media is so pervasive in the world. Right, for instance, right, a little known fact: the UK had a black civil rights movement, right, and various different iterations. But the way our country is structured, those movements were contained, and the people were basically just destroyed in society. So no one hears about them. You see, like the outcomes of things like Professor Arday as like an extension of that same struggle, right? But in America, we get to see it. Put it this way: America's had like almost 400 years of direct conflict between white people and black people, which is well documented. And they've also had that period of time to build black infrastructure on a massive scale. So yes, American culture, American black culture specifically, is more influential. So it could be perceived as better from that point of view. But that's it. That's mm, You know, I can't even pretend that I'm super informed about all of the different various events and important historical figures because I ain't entirely, right. I know bits and pieces, but right. So I put it like this: the way black people, at least from my experience, exist in the UK, we are very much like we're obviously over policed, but we're also very directly segregated in terms of how. All right, so when the Windrush happened, for an example, how black people were distributed through the nation happened in a very strategic way, right? So up north is black people's experience and like their struggle against racism is different to down south, right? Which is we're a small country, but it's almost worlds apart in terms of experience, okay? But historically, if you just look past like transatlantic slavery as a very important period, it's a real period. Prior to that, there's evidence of black people already being in England and being embedded with monarchies and amongst aristocracy, and even in some instances, serfs and stewards and apprentices and all this kind of shit, right? They appear to be like a. All right, so this is very nuanced, right? So there's a group of people who have a view or historic type of outlook that there was a kind of changeover where a specific period of time came where white Western Europeans decided to erase black people from the history of the continent, right? Which has a lot of merit to it. So from that point of view, it's murky to say what actually was happening. But in previous history, like during transatlantic slavery, I don't know too much about black English history in the UK. I can talk a bit about what's come about like via Commonwealth, right, and via like West Indians being invited to the UK and Africans being invited, but that's about as much as I could really say. What's up, rap seems to be more informed than me though, so mhm. But that's recent history. So like even World War I, there's a significant black population in the UK and Asian population. Like you also got to remember there's like Mohammed Doucet and Marcus Garvey and various other even thinkers from America were frequently on the British Isles at certain periods of the 1920s and prior to that. So there is a history of like again I'm hands up, I'm not actually stringing together the history in a very coherent way, but there is lots to know that isn't publicly available, put it that way. It's not like the American struggle, which is very documented. It's quite wrapped up in a lot of half misinformation, half suppression, so it's hard to really express it properly. Yeah, yes. a lot of the information for the past like 2 or 3 generations are actually starting to come to light more through people like the children of these people documenting and putting on the internet. But it's not as, like I said, it's not as well codified and documented as the American struggle, because again, black people and Asian people to an extent don't have that kind of infrastructure in the UK and access. Look, I'll put it to you like this: if Big Brother was a real place, it would be our country, right? Like Orwell, George Orwell, yeah, it would be our country. So in terms of what you can say and how far you can get with saying it, it's very restricted. Which events? You mean like our Black British struggle? Oh no, that's not taught in school. That's what I was saying to you. Like it's right. So again, I forget what it's called, right? But so during the 50s and the 60s, right, all the way up to 70s, it was well documented, right? And these someone wrote a book on it recently, and I forgot the name of it, but it was well documented that the education system disproportionately targeted West Indian black boys and girls, but primarily black boys, right? So it was a concerted effort to miseducate them, right, to fuck them over in the school system. So the effects of those generations, it's like two or three kids later, right? If you want to put it like that, with 10 years, right? They're only just coming to realize, look at what the school system was actually actively doing to us. So we're undoing a lot of that and documenting the actual facts of what did take place. But as far as a school curriculum goes, the official records don't show any black struggle in the UK. The official records shows the UK as this liberal place that has always welcomed a bit of metropolitan, multicultural place. That's how the official history is told. Right? There is no official history of this stuff. Yes, they have been, right? If you were to go to like certain bookshops in London, you'll find like shelves and shelves of literature of like black PhDs and master students documenting and writing about the events that have taken place, but they're just not put out there like that. There's a strong history of protests in Birmingham, in London, and other like smaller towns around the country. But most of those protests take place around, they're like a type of response to a specific action, like the Deptford fires or bombings, right? So it's really hard to explain it. Like you got the sus movement and then the IC3 and like the Metropolitan Police, and there's lots of history of people protesting. It's just not well documented. That's the best way I could describe it. But well, yeah, kind of. Yeah, that's a name as well. Kind of, kind of. Mm, yeah. What? Jesus Christ. I don't know about that. What was like that was like 2017 maybe? Mm. Yeah, of course. It's embedded in the culture. And even then, I don't find that to be effective for us in our country anyways. Our country is not we're not we don't have the kind of system that benefits from a demonstration. In our country, demonstration is containment, just straight up and down. But that's just an opinion, right? Right, so let's get back on track a bit. SZ, we went on a long tangent. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that? Well, that's an American matter. In all honesty, it's America who did that work of like transmuting the power of the N word. It's Americans that did that. We're talking to British people. We learned it from Americans. Well, obviously we've been called it too, but in terms of using it like colloquially or like in a nicer way, we learned that from Americans. You got to give examples. Jesus, I'm joking. You you also got the NAACP. Is that how you say it? The NAACP, I think. Um, so what's his name again? They're very against the use of the N words. They have historically been as Black Americans. I forget what his name was again. Du Bois, Du Bois, Du Bois. So his organization initially, I think it's end up, and I'll look it up anyway. Sorry for interrupting. Carry on. Yeah, yeah, true. That's true. Well, it was SZ who asked that question anyway. He's dropped down, but I guess thanks for coming up. I suppose. Wait, people within the culture though. People within the culture or the race group. Yeah. Mm, not necessarily true because there are Asian people who refer to themselves and other people as the P word. So that's not necessarily true. Yeah, of course. But this is the critique that you're offering, right? Obviously, a slur, like a word like that coming from someone outside of that group has way different connotations than it being said inside of the group. So yeah, it's a given. Impossible. There'll never be a post-racial society. That's just an impossibility. I agree. I agree. That's an interesting view, right? A lot of people, like, so both people who are frequent in the Black liberation movement hold a view to that's similar to that, and then you also have people who are more conservative or FBA kind of aligned who also think that. But I think people think that for different reasons. Like one good example might be prior to prior to integration, black schools were leading in terms of their ability to teach students and like produce citizens who are well educated. And then because of integration, you got like almost overnight the loss of like 40,000 teaching jobs because black teachers weren't allowed to be in these institutions teaching black kids. So an issue like that is something that's interesting. Also, people highlight healthcare and economics like Black Wall Street and shit like that. So I think there's there's pros and cons on both sides because one could argue integration wasn't necessarily done to benefit black people, but one could also argue that black people have also benefited from integration too. So it depends what your main point is. Hmm. I don't know what it is. Hmm. Anti-blackness is it seems to be a global thing. It's not even just in the Americas or just amongst like Western whites. Anti-black is like it's like an exported ideology. So you find like Asian people, Chinese people who can't even speak English, but they know very well how to be derogatory to black people or hold stereotypical views. Again, this has a lot to do with American media and how they paint you guys. All of us really, not it's not just you guys. And whenever you see a black person, people think of all black people as the same monolith. Right? But to the points that you've raised, that doesn't necessarily you haven't really raised a point against integration, put it that way. You're more critiquing the fact that people are happy to exploit black people, but not happy to accept them, if that makes sense. For sure. Ideally, yeah. Hmm. But that was devised, as far as I know, prior to integration. Weren't it like black laws or something like that? It's basically yeah, they figured out a way to enslave black people again, but through the prison system. It still is. It still is. Technically, still is. Hmm. You're right. But there's pros and cons to it, right? I think that's again, like, remember the comparison I was making to the UK, right? You're a way like significantly larger landmass as as North America. But you've also got a significantly longer history of black people being their own group, their own identified group in America. Therefore, you have almost whole black towns, whole like black cities, almost, right? That kind of framework, it's great, it's excellent, right? But you also have to acknowledge you're able to operate in that way because you're in like a capitalist society. Does that make sense? But if you were to say like, right, so the kind of the framework where these black towns and black cities exist in currently is like a multicultural capitalist society. So like the market rules the roost. That being said, if you was to say if you introduce integration in while in that same system, it would clash with the economic system of the country, right? In terms of, all right, so to have it right, one of my critique is like all over the place, right? So one of the biggest problems with Black Wall Street, right, like a completely black owned strip of businesses and banks and stuff, right, was that they couldn't defend it with munitions, right? In order to, right, exactly. So in order to establish somewhat of a micronation inside of a nation, you need to have that same structure or political and military structure to enforce it and uphold it and protect it. So if you was to just overnight go from integration to segregation again, you'd find yourself in that same vulnerable economic and militaristic place. Right? Does that make sense? Because they wouldn't allow you to build your own infrastructure to that level within capitalist America. So I think it would there's look in my most optimistic type of view, I think there'd be a way to balance it where there is like a sustainable black population that just live amongst themselves, a sustainable white population that live amongst themselves, and the people who want to mix can mix. Ideally, yeah, but to be able to like just like switch off integration overnight, I don't think that could work at this point. It's the same. It's the same here, bro. It's the same here. Like with respect to rap, if you look at like the places where black people have been like pushed around into the UK, we're put in we're put in spaces where we're economically reliant on the Asian community and the white community. Therefore, they get to build their communities off the back of our money, off the back of our patronage, etc. But whenever something happens to us or with us, they're not there. So we have a similar situation, but in like a micro version in comparison to America. So I totally understand what you're saying, but the only critique is at this point, at this junction in history, right? Why should you give a shit about what they think about you at this point? Hmm. Same with us. Hmm. It's facts. But what do you think the solution is? Oh, sorry, rap, go. Hmm. She's saying we're not good at capitalism. We're not good at capitalism, bro. That's what's being said. It's like we don't know how to play the game. Ah, words. Ooh. Yeah, yeah. That, but so that's kind of what I was coming around to for to homie, right? Is it's now that you realize it is mostly centered around economics. Like they've dehumanized you from your resources or from your labor if you're a worker or whatever it is. You're kind of faced with what strategy am I gonna pick, right? Am I gonna try and go like ultra capitalist and just make all the money to like control the system that way, or am I gonna try and approach it from a different economic foundation? That's the only way. Because if you're looking to people to look past the money for your humanity in the system as it's currently functioning, it will never happen because the money's too much of a great incentive. Mhm. Because we've been dropped into a game that we was never playing, and no one explained the rules. Like you were at a disadvantage, and you just dropped into a game that's not historically developed where you're from. So it's gonna be all kinds of like maladaptions, and that's like one of them. Like me first, right? So but I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to get this money. It's gonna be it. Whereas like a Western European or white view of capitalism is like, no, this is what we've been doing for generations. Like my dad owned a farm or this business, and my granddad did this. And they got way more skin in the game for longer. So some people do. Some people try and some people fail. Yeah, but look how it played out, bro. Mm. All right, ideologically, what you're saying kind of makes sense in terms of like sharing, like the strategy or how to do it. But you also got like, for me, if you bring up someone like Nipsey Hussle, you kind of point to like there's this guy called Dr. Jared Ball, and he wrote this book called The Myth of Black Battle, right? You kind of point to that like Nipsey Hussle is a token within a tokenized system already, right? Think about who he is and who he's directly linked to, like Rockefeller, all of these big conglomerate things. It's like comparing a kid that has a lottery ticket to a kid that doesn't even know a lottery exists. Like the kid with the lottery ticket can't explain to the kid that doesn't know a lottery exists how to get a lottery ticket or how to win the lottery. That kid, he's already in the system. I disagree. I disagree. But that's just an opinion level thing. It's not necessarily a true. But yeah, Hollywood is. Yeah, but that's the same critique. That's the problem. It's if something is corrupt, right, fundamentally corrupt, that is base, right, and then you come through and you paint it in blackface, you don't magically make it uncorrupt, right? Right. So it's exactly, but at the point in which you get to paint it in blackface, you're already expressing like your token position in the whole system already. To an extent, yes. To an extent, like I'm not one of those people that are like, oh, be a communist, be a socialist. Like, do whatever you think is best, right? But also try to realize there are contradictions in these things, no matter how you go about it. There's gonna be a contradiction if you could, yeah. To a level, but I mean, I would argue that's still part of the same program. The same, like drug dealer gives out turkeys. Like it's part of that same narrative that's playing out. It's not necessarily about becoming like say ideologically enriched or academically becoming an academic weapon in some way. Like he's just playing out the same cycle, the same script that's been designed already. Mm. No. No, it's not. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. He's playing the role that's already designed for him to do that. It's like so like in well, there's nuances because the example I want to give speaks more to like middle class expression of this than like hood level, right? But there's this view called surplus enjoyment, right, which is built off of surplus capital. I forget how it's described, but basically the idea that you can buy into your charitable action or your charitable good. So the Starbucks can say, this percentage of the coffee is gonna go to starving kids in Africa, and the middle class or the consumer can say, well, I'm doing a good deed because I'm buying into this product, and by me buying into this product, I'm doing a good thing in the world. But the person never actually engages with the actual truth of the matter, that there's people starving and I'm just buying a product and I'm not actually doing anything. In a similar way, right, so in a similar way, yeah, so in a similar way, the drug dealer or the trapper or whoever, whatever type of like street entrepreneur he is, he's not actually addressing the baseline problem. He's just buying into the metaphorical Starbucks, which is this identity. Okay, so this identity represents, like, you know, ultra capitalism but in blackface, ultra capitalism but with gangs, ultra capitalism but in Gucci. Like, he doesn't actually address any problems. He's part of the problem. Does that make sense? He would, right, so right, I put it to you like this, right? If you find yourself in a place where these are your role models, you are at a significant disadvantage already, right? The academics, the thought leaders, right? Just people who are more inclined to be able to understand complex problems and break them down simply are the people you should be paying attention to. If you find yourself in an environment where Nipsey Hussles and like rappers and gangsters and shit are your only kind of people to look to, you're in a bad place. So what's going to come out is going to be bad too. You know, you never know. You never know. You never know. Like this, that's what I'm saying. That there's levels to it, so you never know, right? Well, what do you consider benefit, right? So, all right, for an example, right? Elon Musk would be a capitalist, okay? But let's say for example's sake, I don't actually know you personally, Rap, so forgive me, right, for throwing you in it. But let's say Rap is technically a worker, though he owns businesses, right? So Rap is working inside of the system that is capitalism, but Rap himself isn't actually a capitalist because Rap has to actually use energy and time to pursue something, whereas the capitalist just takes a piece of money from over here, puts it in over there, and extracts the maximum amount of profit he can from that thing. Right? And there's no sweat equity, there's no time, there's no learning, there's no trades or anything. That's a real capitalist. So at the level where you say there's no benefits that can be got from capitalism, not at the level of a player, right? Not at the level of someone that's in the game. Someone that's outside of the game, that's where there's benefit. Does that make sense? Essentially, essentially. I agree. Wh- what would actually be like the opportunity to get out of the system is brushing up against things that are ideologically opposed or different to what your current reality is. Right? So no one actually said that. No one said that. You see, but wait. As an example, Ags, hold up, wait. You can go just after I say this. As an example of what I just meant there by having a Nipsey Hussle as your idol. There's someone in the chat who just followed, and his name's Little Fred Hampton. If a person like Fred Hampton wasn't exposed to these ideas through academia, or Hugh Newton wasn't exposed to these ideas through academia and various other thinkers, they would have been just like Nipsey Hussle, essentially. Okay, although those people had the same street elements, like within the Black Panther, there was a whole like underground element to it, which was crime to an extent, right? They would have ended up being exactly the same as Nipsey Hussle, but because they interface with ideas that are abstract to where they're from or contrary to where they're from, they were able to like engage in what's called the dialectic, take their thesis of existence, the antithesis of like Marxist analysis, and produce something called the Black Panther Party or the Breakfast Program, etc. Because they interacted with something that isn't already put in front of them. Does that make sense? So the Nipsey Hussle is the thing that's already put in front of you. So you would lose. I don't know. I don't know enough to be able to say if that's true or not. I don't know. But for the sake of your argument, I'll take it. Yeah. No, not necessarily. Because look, right. Oh, sure. No, that's an oversimplification. People would still do those jobs for various reasons. This is subjective. Right? I'll let you finish though. Some people, yeah. Such a bleak outlook on humanity. No, I'm joking. Yeah, but didn't the profession of healing people exist prior to capitalism? Yes. No. What are you talking about? Capitalism is recent, right? Now, capitalism as an economic system is recent, but as an ideology, yeah. So, but you also have to consider the labor value of exchange, right? What is the value of the labor that I'm putting into this thing, and how is it determined? What is the outcome, basically? So, in a bartering system, you'd say, right, how do I determine that 2 cows are worth 6 pots of honey? Okay, but in a capitalist structure, as we understand it, we say forget about the honey value, right? There's this promissory note, and then we try to like arbitrarily assign an amount of hour, an amount of effort, amount of product to that arbitrary note, and we say that this amount of time, this amount of resources is worth this amount of notes or gold prior to that. But the profession of healing people and building things existed way before the promissory note, way before the value exchange theory. So this isn't true. And then the next level to it is you have to consider, in the context of the conversation that we're having, right, how did the black community manage a view like segregation or integration, and what that speaks to in terms of economic empowerment. Are they ideologically inclined to work towards something? That is really what it entails. Right now, what the not remuneration, how would you say it, reimbursement is of their efforts is up for discussion. Would you prefer money? Would you prefer gold? Would you prefer an item? That is completely up to people to decide, and I'm not even debating that. But in the context of what we're saying, it's not saying that communism is ideal and it would work and capitalism all bad. The context of the conversation matters in terms of what she was saying with how black people are treated, and that's why. He profited off the people. Yeah, sure. I'll take that. Take that example. Profited off the people for sure. For sure. Yes, brought back. It's a liberal. It's a liberal view. Yeah, but that's a liberal view. The liberals don't think there should be minimal state intervention, so taxes would be immoral to a liberal. Yeah, so to them, taxes would be a type of overreach. I'm not saying they don't exist on a spectrum, but the view of taxes being immoral would be a liberal view. I think a lot of people think of liberalism as a left view, but liberalism itself isn't exclusively a left thing. It can be very, you know what I mean? Would they? Given what? Yeah. I'm not quite sure. I'm not well informed on it, so I can't really say. I don't know. You can tell me. You can tell me what it is, and I can get it for you if you want. Let's just have to do that. Yeah. So the thing is, right? In terms of like how American politics plays out, it's a little bit unique in terms of the names. Like for instance, you have a Republican Party and a Democrat Party. Right? Or maybe that's not the best way to explain that. Right? We can't see it though. Ah, yes. Authoritarianism. You also got to take into consideration Overton window as well. You also got to take the Overton window into consideration as well. So you also have to take the Overton window into consideration as well. It's basically just established that things that would be considered left now may be further centre in the future, or further left, or things that may be considered right now maybe further right or centre. Yeah, so yeah, these things change over time. Haha, to the left. There you go. You're a Christian. I'm just joking. Just joking. I jump out the window. Mm. I think that's a grey area though. Fuck. Now I'm about to steal man liberals for fuck's sake. Alright, so what about the dad's bodily autonomy then? Oh, that's mad. No, I don't. No, I don't personally. But I just thought it was interesting for a still man. Well, people walk around with the Nazi flag and all kinds of other strange things. That'd be ideologically dependent, wouldn't it? So you're talking about children, women, and men. Talking about everybody. Exactly. Oh, I don't know. Don't know if I've seen it. Nah, not my computer, mate. Nah. But wait. So yeah, why should the state make the dad give the boy his blood? I don't know. But all right. So now let's think from the dad's perspective then. Since it's his child and his body, is it immoral for him? From the dad's perspective, being that it's his child and it's his body that they want the blood from, would the dad consider it immoral? Really? But you've already said that he doesn't want to do it. So let's move it across to the other side of the gender spectrum. Let's say that the state's going to force a woman to have a child and then look after that child all the way up until 18. Is that moral? She's gonna have to bring the child to term, e.g., her body, right? And then she's gonna have to continue to, like, she's not gonna be given the right to abort the baby in simple terms. Huh? 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 All right, so let's get this. All right, so let's get this correct, right? So the initial analogy was there's a dad, right? He has a child that's sick, and all that child needs in order for the child to stay alive is a drip of blood from the dad every day. But we've already determined that the dad doesn't want to give the blood every day. You said it wouldn't be immoral for the state to step in and force the dad to give the blood every day. So I said, let's move that to the other side of the spectrum. There's a mum, right? She has to carry the child to term because it's like obviously gender dependent, right? Once she brings a child to bear, she has to look after the child so it doesn't die. The mum doesn't want to do that, but the state is saying that the mum should do that, right? Is your opinion still the same? I get that as an example based on the blood, like the drip of blood. Well, just literally prevent her from disrupting the gestation period or the actual time. Basically, no, just prevent her from stopping the pregnancy to come into full term, right? That's all I meant by it, not like doing anything untoward. That's crazy, man. Well, well, obviously not. Wait. What do you mean by that? Said it's not his final four. What do you mean? That's a strange view. No, it doesn't stop developing, but it's born. So I mean, it's completed it's completed the pregnancy phase. So it's a human. It's like a full human now. Well, no, it's not. But my language is a bit shitty, right? But it's born into the world. Put it that way, right? Anyways, look, this is all my fault. This is all my fault. No, let's not do this. Let's not do this, right? This is all my fault, right? But all I was trying to point out is why is it okay for the dad to be forced to give his blood every day and not okay for the woman to, that's what I was trying to say. Sure. Well, that's not true. Well, you got to break the skin to get that blood every day, don't you? Unless you keep the guy wired up to something. Unless you keep him wired up to something where you can get blood extracted. A lifetime supply of blood. And just leave it there so the kid could just have a drip every day. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy, fam. Look, anyways, look, it's crazy. So the way I was viewing it is like the drip of blood was just like an analogy for care or like a metaphor for care. That's the way I was viewing it. That's why I said it like that. Hmm. But it could, because now you're saying he has to take blood packs, so that's a significant amount of blood. It still has an effect. How many milliliters is one drop? Look, anyways, I'm being a dick. In all honesty, let's get back to capitalism and the argument you're actually making. I just fucking about. Let's. What was the Greek god that had to get his liver pecked out every day? It's a, it's not Apollo. It's Prometheus. The father would be Prometheus. No, I'm still down to have the main conversation. How is it? All right, so what we came to is your view on how people are okay to extract economically from black people but not treat them with humanity. And then I was kind of like presenting, all right, so if it boils down to an economic thing, what is the approach to fixing that? Are you going to go full fledged into capitalism, or are you going to find another system? So that was the ultimate context of it all. And obviously, Rap brought in Nipsey Hussle as an example of black capitalism, and I was pointing out to him that putting a blackface on something that's destructive doesn't automatically make it good, and a solution for all, given that Nipsey Hussle technically has like a not just a genetic lottery ticket, but a societal lottery ticket. So he's not the average black person. That was where the context was. So if you want to carry on with it from there, I'm happy to. But if you want to talk about something else, I don't mind also. I don't think that's true, but I can understand it. Yeah, Margaret Sanger, innit? Black population, basically. To reduce the black population. That was the plan behind it. Ultimately, it was a black depopulation program. Wait, how's that relevant? That so yeah, that does make sense in that context. But so what the underlying view was, right, is that are we better off segregated or integrated? Right? That was how it got to this point, right? So economically speaking, my critique would be you can't have it both ways, right? If you want to be segregated, you can't try and beat them at their game outside of the game. You need your own political foundation. You need your own economic foundation, and of course, with Black Wall Street as an example, you need your own military foundation. So from that point of view, that's why I raised the question of what would actually be the economic answer then. If you feel that you're not being respected where you spend your money, you don't want to keep spending the money in that place in that configuration. So it is a plan B though. It's definitely a plan B. Uh, just tapping that like. I appreciate you. Yeah, that's a good point. Ags has introduced an intersectional struggle. She's basically come and layered gender over race. That's what she's done. That's why it's a quandary now. Yeah. But what comes into question, Ags, right, is the value of the service offered to the gender important enough to keep that service going regardless of the origins of it? Because the origins of it has a lot to do with race, but in terms of the but in terms of the value for the gender itself, is the service valuable to the gender? If it was a racist giving it or not a racist? So how? So an interesting thing though, how would you pass that with, for instance, right? We understand the history of Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood, but now you also got to add a bit of context. The chances of a black woman dying in labour due to the same racist hospital care is significantly higher than a white woman's. So if a black woman was to take that into consideration, also, Planned Parenthood is something that she may have to consider. Medical racism, yeah. I say things I probably shouldn't say anyway. That's medical racism. No, it's not just neglected. It's medical racism that actually comes from studies done on slaves and ethnic groups in an unethical way. It's not just neglect. It's teaching that black people have a lower pain tolerance or the higher pain tolerance. All these kinds of things that are just medically scientifically untrue are still taught. In some instances, yeah. No, neglect in like it insinuates that there's some lack of care, there's something you didn't do, right? But medical racism is a proactive approach. So things that you actively do, like part of the procedure. Does that make sense? Yeah, two. Two, yes, I agree. Two. Not taking it off the table. Neglect is a part of it. Negligence is a part of it. But there's things that you're actively taught to do, right, in terms of the medical racism, how it's taught. But anyways, the only reason I introduced that is because it's still the same intersectional struggle of the black woman's experience in hospital and the black woman's experience in Planned Parenthood. Right? But the value of the service is what's in context. That's all that's being said there. It's considerable though. Sure. That's one part of it. That's one part of it. Right? But again, right, so I'm not saying that you should be pro-abortion or anti-abortion. I'm just trying to give a wider cultural type of critique, right? So in consideration of saying, look, I'm going to be bringing a life into this world, right? Your ethnicity comes into it, your race, your politics, where you live, all of these things are in context of deciding to or not bring a life into this world. Now, the fact of the matter is, something like abortion has existed for a long time before Margaret Sanger. But how it's played out in America is to target the black population and reduce it historically, which is undeniably a fact, right? It's geared towards hurting black people. But that being said, when a black person existing in that structure has to decide whether to bring a life into the world or not, they're not just considering, oh, can I look after this baby? Is what is the country or the world at large going to do to this baby and me during the process of that? So if I was a woman, I would take those things into consideration as well when deciding to either have a child or not have a child, right? But that being said, okay, the value of a service like abortion exists independently of the race struggle, right? Because it's a gendered service. So really, when homie is saying I don't want to spend money with people who hate me, no, it's not a matter of fact that she couldn't get an abortion somewhere else. Yeah. 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 You could be though. In a way, no, that's far too simplistic. That's far too simplistic. This is a fact. Hmm. Well, that's what the initial critique of capitalism was, right? The human doesn't matter. That's the problem. They don't need to see your humanity as long as they can extract from you. It wouldn't matter if you were Chinese, a gay, a midget, or whatever. As long as there's something they can extract, e.g., the capital, the money, then it doesn't matter to them. They can always treat you any way that gets them the money. And the view is, because of how economics works, the scarcity produces your need for it. So you have to come to them. And then if we systematically make it so you can't set up your own, then you fall right back in the same trap again. You still got to come to the same people that hate you. So in the larger story or the larger picture, if you wanted to be able to like actually have make buying black actually be an effective thing, you would need to establish like not necessarily a micronation, but something akin to that, where you follow your own political structure, you have your own economic understandings, and you need to be able to enforce that and protect that. So you need some policing or military to support it. But as long as you choose to engage with the current system as it stands, you should also be willing to accept that you won't get equality from that system, because you're playing it at the level that they want you to play it, which is about the money. I don't think equality can exist full stop personally, but it's a bit pessimistic. It's not possible. It's not possible. Yeah. Let's go. You know, I can't really argue that because I haven't had jollof rice yet. I haven't had authentic jollof rice yet, so I can't argue that. Yeah, but again, like the state of the UK is a mess. Like a lot of people have this view that all blackness is just concentrated in high density cities. In those high density cities, yes, you could get jollof next to chicken and chips, next to curry and mutton, whatever, right? But I don't live in a city. I'm like one of those displaced blacks, right, based on that whole history we discussed earlier on. So we don't have access to authentic African food and cuisines and shops and shit. You have to go out of your way for that as well. I'm old enough. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, but I'm also someone who doesn't live in a city. Oh wait, I just realized that all this time we've been like streaming to other platforms and they cannot hear the conversation.